Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Hire Talents podcast, hiring strategies for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And today I've got a really cool guest. He covers a topic I'd love to death here, but is Darian Michael. How do you do 1,000 interviews a month? And maybe we're exaggerating. Well, I don't think he is. But when you got to do a ton of interviews, like you got to have a better way that is effective, right? And so Darian's got a company who's figured that out. So Darian, tell us, about how you got into the hiring space and about the company you're with that you've got now.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think like a lot of people, and I'd love to dig into more on your background too, because I imagine we probably have some similarities in our backstory. But I didn't start off in recruiting. My background's in finance and entrepreneurship. I love ideas, love starting things. And Qualify was kind of born out of personal pain point that I experienced during my last company that I was at. So I was at another startup company before this called Viral Launch. And we were kind of on a rocket ship. We were, no pun intended, we were very astronaut themed, but we were an e-commerce company helping third-party retailers launch and grow their businesses on Amazon. So we were in a good place at the right time with everything that's happening in e-commerce. And for me, the founder was a friend of mine, and he asked me to be his employee number one and help him build and grow the company. And so what that looked like for me was running the internal operations of the team, especially as we started to scale. So we went from he and I to over 70 people on the team. And my job, like I said, was managing all the internal stuff, startup companies.
So hiring, selling on your plate, I take it.
Yeah, so 100%. There's a lot, like everyone in a startup wears a ton of hats. And I always joke that everyone has different perspectives. I felt like at the time I was wearing maybe the most hats. And yeah, one of those was the leading HR and talent, at least for our first 40 or so hires before we brought on a director of talent that took over from there.
So tell us about how Qualify was born out of this, madness of growing like a weed or, launching like a rocket ship.
Yeah, there's a few different pieces to it. So, obviously just the chaos of a startup company and me wearing, juggling a bunch of different responsibilities that lended itself to me just trying to figure out ways to scale myself and allow myself to do more and be more efficient. I found the specific step that Qualify solves in the hiring process is the phone interview. And I found at that time that step to be particularly cumbersome, despite what people might think on the surface. It's pretty straightforward. Just 30-minute conversations are pretty quick. But when you're doing it with multiple candidates for multiple positions, it really starts to add up. And so that's what it felt like for me. And I was also really repetitive. So just asking what seemed like the same scripted questions over and over again. I try to be pretty consistent in my approach. And that kind of, I was like, well, if I'm saying the same things over and over again, like if I can just record it, it'd be, a lot more convenient for candidates to respond at their own convenience. The other piece to that was I had a 45-minute commute to work every day, which for me was, I know you live I believe you're in LA. For me, like in Indianapolis, that's a decent commute. I was I could probably knock out, a few interviews just on my way back and forth to work every day. And so
hopefully without getting in a car accident, right?
Yeah. So no, that's where the idea sort of started.
So I love that. I mean, so speaking to a guy, I've done 10,000 interviews more and counting. I mean, and a lot of those, first interviews, right? And I used to do, 7 years, probably even up to 6 years ago, I would probably be doing anywhere up to 12 interviews a day at a half an hour a piece. That's, that's 6 hours a day. And then another 6 hours of doing something else probably, right?
And you probably had a bunch of other stuff that was on your plate as well at the same time.
And I use the same script every single time. I still use that same script today in multiple versions of interviews. So what was the script that you came up with that, you were using and like your recommended script, like your ideal, like catch-all script that you might use
Yeah.
in this, even the scripted interview, I guess? Like, how did that? Well, first, okay, what was your script, and then I want to understand how you evolved that to your phone interview thing.
Yeah. No, I have to dig back on it. We still kind of recommend a frame, like some sort of a similar framework from then. And I can't take any credit for it. I was a rookie at the time. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of startup founders and startup people, they're figuring things out on the
Yeah.
fly. And
So
so
who gave you the script?
I Googled it. Yeah,
You
like,
just Googled it.
I'm
Yeah.
not ashamed
You just borrowed it from the Google. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And so like I went through a number of, I was actually, pretty intentional about what I wanted to, or how I wanted to approach it. So I did like
Yeah.
do a decent amount of searching to figure it out. And there's this one, I probably can, I don't know if you have show notes so we can, leave it in. It's just, like I said, it's similar to what I still recommend today, but it's the seven phone interview questions that I forget the exact title, but it's a set of 7 questions that you need to ask, at the phone interview stage. A decent amount of it is logistical. So, in terms of what they're expecting in terms of, wages, things of that nature, when's their start availability, when's their availability for a follow-up interview.
Yeah.
But what interested them in the company in the first place, kind of, that's like a very high level one to start to
what do you look
out,
for?
like,
What do you look for in somebody's response there?
Yeah, just intentionality. Like a lot of people, especially if they've applied to, if you got that candidate through an application, sometimes depending on the source, people are just applying to random jobs. So you want to know that they're actually interested in the company and interested in the specific role, and they didn't just
if you
spray
invite
and pray.
them for a phone interview, I mean, whether they're spraying and praying or anything, right? At least if you've invited them for a phone interview, you think they would take like 3 minutes to like look at your company website and like
exactly
something, right?
Yeah. I'm not expecting like a full deep dive, like full diligence, but at least that you, after being interested, that you do in fact have interest in working for the company, that it's not just the title that you saw and cool, this fits the description. So that's one, pretty surface level one. That's and for a lot of the clients that we work with, the idea for them is we help high volume recruiters. So it's going from the hundreds to the tens or less that they're screening. So helping them to really filter that.
So if you're gonna do an automated phone interview, right? What would be some of the more impactful interview questions that you would recommend somebody asking a candidate?
Yeah, no, those are key ones that I kind of started with. We see people asking anywhere from, I recommend to keep it not as short as possible, but focused on the key things that you need to know at this point in the process in order to really qualify the candidate and make sure that they're the most qualified to move on and spend the most time with. That's the idea for us. So in terms of questions, they are the logistical, like there's a lot of logistical ones, but then also sussing out whether or not they are going to be potentially a quality fit in terms of their role and the experience that they have at that position, and also cultural, not necessarily cultural fit type questions, but how they might adapt into the organization. And so just getting engaged on those. So like I said, my interview questions are around 7, which I typically recommend 7 to 10 questions. We've seen people ask upwards of 15, but really some of those things can be reserved for your in-depth interviews in the next stage. And so yeah.
So how do you screen, if you got 100 phone interviews that are pre-recorded, how do you screen those?
Yeah. No, so kind of the format, the way it works, it's a one-way facing interview. The recruiters are able to record their own questions directly into Qualify. So they use their own voice. We do have what we call qualified questions, which are kind of pre-built and preloaded into the platform when you first log in. But typically recruiters are going in there. They have their own scripts that they've been using before us. And so we just kind of help them, match that format those questions to the platform. But yes, their voice is very personal in that regards. They can create a question bank and then click to add questions to create an interview. And then from there, they send out these invites to candidates. The candidates are able to actually take these over the phone. So that's one of the unique things about Qualify versus other, typically video interviewing platforms, is that it's actually done over a standard phone call. It's very easy It's actually, you'll get the invitation, you'll click a link to read instructions. In those instructions, you can enter your phone number, or your phone number is already programmed in, and then you hit start, and then our system calls your phone. So you pick up and answer and navigate through the questions in that way. It's very easy, just like
but
navigating a voicemail.
how does the recruiter process all the information?
Yeah, so the recruiter then, as soon as the candidate gets done, the recruiter gets a notification. They can jump straight to that interview. And the way that they process it is we record the audio. We also automatically transcribe the responses, so they can, skim through, but more often they're listening to the responses. And the way it's structured in the playback is they can listen to the entirety of the interview. Again, only the responses. They don't have to listen to their self-talk anymore. So it kind of eliminates half of the conversation.
Yeah.
But then they can also jump to specific points in the interview. So maybe they are really strict on what their compensation requirements are. And if that's a question they ask, they can jump straight to that question.
Or they can read it in the transcript, disqualify, move on to the next candidate.
Yeah. Because the unfortunate reality is, you've done 10,000 interviews. I know, and in that mix, there's been probably more than a few where you knew early on, it was not going to be a good fit.
Thank you for your time. I'll call you back in a couple of days if we're interested. Like after 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what do you do with the next 25 minutes of your 30-minute block that you schedule? Block down, right?
Right. And so with us, like, they're able to really take that review time down to like 5 minutes.
So they're reviewing. It takes less time to listen to the interview. They're able to review them, process them, move them on to the next step much more quickly. This is amazing because now you can hire an introvert as a recruiter, right? Like is their job. Introverts just love processing information, systems. They don't really. They don't really want to be on the phone talking to other people. It doesn't mean not all introverts won't do it, right? Like I've got some recruiters who work for me that are like, really introverted people and very, very good recruiters because they're very intuitive and empathetic, right? But they're being on the phone talking to people is not exactly their most favorite part of the job.
It can be not that they don't enjoy people, but it can just be like, for me, especially starting this company, running this company, a lot of my job is meeting with people. And so I love meeting with people and learning about, new things from others. But like I said, I'm an introvert. So what I find is that can be, draining, throughout your day.
Yeah. If it's too much, it's exhausting, right?
Yeah. And so, and like, also we've heard a lot of recruiting teams, they're trying to get more of their time back. Sometimes they're recruiting across different time zones, and the demands that they have, that they're working late evenings or skipping lunch. And so like we're able to like help them, get their time back so they can get to more high value things.
And the demand for recruiters are like through the roof these days, right? So, I saw LinkedIn, graph or survey, and it was like
7x.
It was like this hockey stick, like demand for recruiters. That and every other role, but I think that, recruiters probably top the list, right? Or one of the highest demand right out there. So
I think it's something like from year over year from last year around this time, it's like a 7x increase in job postings. So
it's crazy. Yeah, it's interesting. So okay, so I was really curious, like, what is the compliance rate? So I'm an assessment guy, right? And we often ask people to complete assessments before we interview people, right? And the compliance rate, if there's no interaction, and depending on the job, compliance rates can be relatively low or to okay. Especially before any interaction with the recruiter. Typically after there's an interaction with the recruiter that's meaningful, compliance rates can go, be very high, 70 to 100%, some other factors go through there. But what's the compliance rate on asking somebody to do a phone interview typically?
Yeah. And I'm assuming you mean like them actually completing, like,
Like they submit a resume and the recruiter fires back a nice note saying, "Hey, Darian, thanks for applying, man. Before we take the next step, can you take 10 minutes to, answer these questions with nobody else on the other line?"
That's a good question. What we typically see is probably somewhere in line, like with what you said. What we see typically is around 50 to 70% completion rate, interview to response rate, which happens to be typically, from what we are able to gather from recruiters on par or better than what they're already seeing from their kind of traditional methods.
Yeah.
And the caveat with that is we're also sending more throughput through. So they're able to, since they're not as restricted on their time, they can send out more invites and still see a lot more throughput with that same percentage rate. So
that's an interesting thing. So if you're a recruiter and I've got a list of 100 people that, are there, and I've only got, enough time to process. I mean, again, in my heyday, I probably was processing maybe 60 people a week. It's a lot of people, but
that's a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's like cranking, right? Like, I don't know, actually, I don't know any of the recruiters that do that, but some high volume ones do, right? Like, might even do more than that a little bit, but very few process that many candidates. And there's a lot of systems in place to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so I guess my question is we maybe have to get to that number. I might be looking at 300 to 500 resumes to get to 60 people. We're like, we were going to spend that valuable time with them, right?
Yeah.
So you end up with this like contingent of people. You're like, when you're screening a resume, you're like, okay, I do like a 1 to 5 scale, like 4s and 5s. I'm like, okay, I want to spend time on the phone.
Yeah.
Then they end up with these 3-star people.
Threes,
3-star people are the ones like something's wrong with the resume, or it came through in a bad format, or there's just something I don't understand. It doesn't sort of fit, but there's something else here that is sort of interesting. But I'm like, I don't have the time for it.
We're here for the 3 stars. Yes, for sure. Like,
okay.
we're obviously you're screening everyone. That our clients are screening all their applicants through Qualify, but that's one of the things that we try to hit on and showcase is that maybe there's some hidden gems in that
Diamonds
mix. Those side, I know, like we use kind of a thumbs up and thumbs down, but there's like those sideways thumbs that you're like, if I was doing this the old fashioned way, my time is too valuable. I don't have enough time to get to those folks. But sometimes you find really great candidates that don't know how to showcase themselves well in a resume or an application, but can knock it out of the park when you actually get a chance to talk to them. And so this gives them an opportunity to showcase themselves as well. So that's for sure.
I've seen this too. It's a similar concept, right? Like, is it like it's Amazon, Bezos, and Musk, and like all these big time tech guys, right? There's this extreme shortage of talent out there, right? And they know it, right? They're pretty clever. I mean, I just read an article today, like Bezos is like, no more pot tests for their delivery drivers, right? And they expect that to increase their talent pool by 400%. We're just not going to test anybody who smokes pot anymore. Like, we don't really care, I guess. I mean, whatever. Like, but I don't know what another insurance company feels about that, but
right.
I mean, other than that, I don't see what the problem is, right? So the point is that they use assessments and they use other strategies and they look outside the box. Like, they don't care about education. They don't care about direct experience, right? They don't care about these other things that so many people put such a big emphasis on, like, must have a college degree, must have experience in customer service, must have experience in this, must have this background. Like, they're like, no. We're going to look for like people with the right aptitude and attitude and behaviors, and then we're going to teach them, right?
100%.
Why do they do that?
I think it's one, smart, and for multiple reasons. Another thing like that sort of mentality can help with is, and I'm not no expert on this, but just helping with opening up different types of candidate pools in terms of restricting. But I know a lot of job descriptions in and of themselves can be biased and reduce your opportunity to hire diverse candidates. And so I think things like that, not specifically that, but mentalities around, all right, what do we actually care about for this role? What is this person actually going to be doing, and what are the proper skill sets that need to apply? Let's make sure we focus on those areas and, cut the mess that doesn't actually matter. And so,
it opens up talent pools, right? And no, there is a huge play on diversity and being less biased, right, there too. And that is just opening up talent pool. It's a byproduct of it, right? I love it. Yeah, I think, you know, so many entrepreneurs and employers, they're stuck right on these, like they have too many requirements, and many of them don't want to hear this, but I just am always encouraging people, like, look for that diamond in the rough, right? That's, open up, be less restrictive, and look more for the raw potential, and
Yeah.
develop people, right? And so many people are impatient for that. But I think in a time like this, I mean, I don't know how many people have much choice in the matter, right?
Yeah.
Um, what
Yeah.
about scorecards? So, like, how do like, I get this audio file back, like, are your clients using some sort of scorecard to rate the interview, or to, like, are they just like checking boxes and then like moving them on to the hiring manager? How does that work?
Yeah. No. So we, what the current version of the product is thumbs up, thumbs down sort of
Okay.
system. So it's screening in essence. And so we're just helping them to be able to make quick decisions, actionable decisions. They could share the actual interview and the transcriptions internally with hiring managers, and
Mm-hmm.
those hiring managers can provide feedback in the application as well. The scorecard piece is definitely something that we're interested in, though,
Yeah.
or other ways of evaluating and rating your
Yeah.
candidates. We try to do some of these structured hiring approaches internally, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it's working really well. And we want to continue to enhance that ourselves. And so we use Qualify, obviously,
Yeah.
on Qualify.
Yeah.
But from the next step in our hiring process is actually a structured interview. And we ask the same, or depending on the role, we ask a scripted set of
Yeah.
questions. We
Yeah.
keep notes as the interview is happening. We record it, and kind of try to have a good, better, that, like, like here's a quality answer versus a, low quality
Yeah,
answer that we're
for
looking
some
for.
examples so you can train people, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is nobody's ever taught how to be good at interviewing, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I've asked, like, I feel like I always ask these people, like, you go to school, you go to business school, right, or whatever, something in that realm. You even learn HR, like, in those courses. Are there any courses that are teaching people how to hire, or even
Yeah.
interview, better yet, or
It's
both?
probably
I
one
mean,
of the, if not the most important thing that you could do to, help your organization. And yeah,
yeah.
it's very overlooked as a skill set and training.
And
I know
and
there's
who teaches people how to do these things?
right. That's Yeah, it's a struggle. I think hopefully we can help with that, like, over time, as we continue to access more data, as we learn what's
Yeah.
working, what's not working, start to share content and share
Yeah.
best practices around, right? If you're hiring for these types of candidates, or if you are asking this question, this is the best way to ask this question. It's going to lead to your better results and gather the information that you need. And so those sorts of things are really exciting in terms of what we're doing now. And yeah, we're only getting started, so like a lot more is to come, hopefully, with
Yeah.
what we have going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. So I always like, if you can leave us with like two things that would, that somebody can implement in their hiring process tomorrow that would potentially make an impact on their hiring results, what would those be?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that that I've seen recruiting organizations, as I say, so like, the recruiting teams with the folks that they work with internally is typically, if they're having struggles, it's a lot of times they're not on the same page with each other. So
Yeah.
making sure that everyone knows, all right, we are hiring for this title, yes, but what is this person going to be doing for us? Again, what are the skill sets that we need? A lot of, if you're doing things
Clear
okay, you have like an,
expectations.
yeah, you have like an intake meeting,
Yeah.
setting clear expectations, not only about the role, but about what the process is going to look like, making sure everyone's bought in. So that way you can have a streamlined process and it flows smoothly, and it's going to lead to your best outcomes, in terms of getting the best candidate. So that's
Yeah.
one. The other is that structured approach. That's kind of inherent to Qualify, is
Yeah.
at the very least, every candidate is going to
It's
get the
gonna be
same
asked
exact
the same
experience.
question.
Yeah, they're going to get the
Yeah.
same questions. So what that does, though, is it allows you to compare candidates on an apples to apples basis.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things, one of the
Yeah.
biggest failings of when I was doing recruiting is, even though I was asking these had the same set of scripted questions.
Mhm.
Conversations can go in so many different ways from,
Mhm.
from that, especially when you're in a live context. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
for instance, I'm an athlete. I've been a lifelong athlete. I love
Yeah.
basketball. If we get to talking about basketball, I might stay on
Yeah.
that topic longer. We
And
might,
now all of a sudden you
vibe
love that
over.
person
Right. And
and
it's
but
like,
you
oh, I
forgot
love
to
you because
ask about their work history.
exactly, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that candidate really stuck out to me. Why? I wonder why that was. And we hire the person that likes basketball but can't do the job. So
Yeah,
stuff like
exactly.
that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a
yeah. I
a
love it.
joking answer, but yeah, like
No,
having a
no,
structured
I think
approach
it's
to it.
dead on. No, I mean, yeah, structured creates helps give you that kind of comparison and helps you be more systematic and
Yeah,
process oriented about how you're
and helps you
evaluating.
like iterate too. So like maybe
Hmm.
after the first 10-20 interviews, you're like, all right, that question's not leading to the answers that
Yeah,
I
like
want. So
I
let's try asking it a
keep
different
sending me in
way.
left field or something, right? Yeah,
Yeah, let's ask that
yeah,
in a better way,
yeah.
and so it allows you to start to train, and then also like if you have a larger team, allows you to scale quick, like not only like with the volume, but as you bring on new recruiters or you
Hmm.
replace recruiters that come and go, it allows it to be like
Yeah.
pretty transferable.
It's also scientifically proven to produce better hiring outcomes too, by the way. So
Yeah,
if you look at the IO psychology part of it, the research shows that structured interviews produce statistically higher, better results on the hiring outcomes. And
yeah,
yeah, and so
100%.
often we do we get
Yeah, people get in their
sidetracked in
own
the,
way.
yeah,
Yeah,
they, oh, I
people
do
get in
my,
their own way.
or yeah, I do, I'm gonna, ask you one question and the other guy some other question just because who
Yeah,
knows?
was
It
feeling
just felt
different today.
right, right at
Yeah,
the time, right?
yeah.
So awesome. Well, Darian, it was a great pleasure to have you on. Tell us where we can find you, and then everything will be on the page and all the socials as well. So yeah, how do we get in touch with you if someone wants to learn more about Qualify?
Yeah, so you can find qualify. It's spelled with an I instead of a Y. Wow, instead of a Y. So QUALIFI.HR. So
Oh,
qualify.hr is where you can find us there. And then yeah, you can find me. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So Darian Michael. I'm pretty
awesome.
easy to find. Last name is
We'll,
spelled
we'll,
MIKELL to be like you said
we'll
in the
send you
show
some
notes.
PMs. Good. Well,
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
And of course, all the information will be there, links to your site, contact information, social handles, wherever Darian is best found, so you want to catch up. If you like the idea of pre-recorded phone interviews, great for volume hiring, definitely worth checking out. And thank you for your time today.
yeah. No, thank you for having me. This is great.
Awesome.